This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Have you turned your key and heard that dreaded tick, 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 tick because of a dead battery? No worries. I've got the NOCO Genius Boost Jump Starter. This compact tool fits in your glove box and features rechargeable lithium battery technology that will start a dead battery in your car, boat, truck, or RV. It packs a whopping 12-volt, 400-amp starting power and can start up to 20 dead batteries on a single charge. Plus, it has built-in spark-proof technology with reverse polarity protection to safely jumpstart your vehicle. The compact, ergonomically designed clamps are solid copper for maximum conductivity, and there's a built-in ultra-bright dual LED flashlight with 7 modes, including an SOS emergency strobe. It's easily rechargeable with a USB outlet, and you can charge your smartphone or tablet while you're on the road. Works on any 12-volt lead-acid battery. The Genius Boost from NOCO is the ultimate emergency tool that's safe and easy to use. Quality design, state-of-the-art technology from NOCO, your battery care source since 1914. Get yours at geniuschargers.com. Hello, automotive enthusiasts. Today I'm really excited to introduce a very special guest, Peter Harholdt. Peter, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I'm ready to go.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you here. Peter Harholdt is both a museum photographer and a veteran racer. He's a partner with Stanton Speed in the Monograph Series, where they publish automotive books. His clients have included the Smithsonian, the Louvre, MoMA, and the White House. He's raced in IMSA and the SCCA, and he's had podium finishes in the 24 Hours of Daytona and the Can-Am. Among Peter's recent automotive books are Can-Am Cars in Detail, the Stanton Speed Monograph Series, and The Allure of the Automobile and The Art of the Hot Rod, both with Ken Gross, who's also been a guest here at Cars Yeah. So Peter, I've told our listeners just a little bit about you. Would you please take some time and share a little bit more about your history and your career and your interests and, of course, your passion for automobiles?
Well, my interest in machinery started very young. My dad was a road builder. I know that when I was very young, instead of bedtime stories, I would get technical descriptions of how things work.
Very cool.
So by the time I was 6, I knew how 4-cycle engines differed from 2-cycle and how differentials worked. And so I was, early, well-versed in that sort of thing.
Sure.
I went to a circle track race for the first time when I was 6, I think. Mm-hmm. There was a friend of my parents who was a local radio announcer and was also an announcer at the racetrack. So circle track in Virginia at 6, and then I think I went to the second ever race at VIR with my Uncle Peter when I was 12. And also, my dad's construction company built a local drag strip, so I had
very cool.
I had very early circle track drag racing and road racing exposure. Also started racing and developing go-karts early on. Was taken primarily by the road racing. Mm-hmm. I was at VIR when Penske and Bob Holbert and Briggs Cunningham and all these great heroes were racing, and I was just fascinated with the whole thing.
Wow.
And in college, I worked at several car businesses while I was in college as a mechanic at a foreign car shop, and I was a salesman at a Saab dealership and worked at a BMC dealership and a Volvo dealership. So both interest and work while I was in school. Then in graduate school, the art thing sort of took over. However, I was still buying and selling cars to support myself in graduate school. And eventually I built my first SCCA car in my studio at VCU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a car that I raced in for several years.
You were talking about when the art thing came about, and I know photography is your passion and in photographing cars and things, but how did that all come about?
Well, my grandmother was an accomplished photographer, and she got me interested, and the first photographs I made were of race cars. So that was the motivation. Mm-hmm. Then I got very much interested in it, took all the classes I could in undergraduate school, and worked in the field. I worked at a public TV station, was art director at a public TV station, and still photographer. Mm-hmm. Every time I had to make a living, I went back to photography. My work went on to other media. I got a graduate degree in sculpture, but always photography was the thing that I came back to. Then after graduate school, I got a job at the Smithsonian working as a photographer at the Hirshhorn Museum.
Oh, wow.
Worked there for 4 years, and then the freelance business got so busy, I left the Hirshhorn, and since have been doing my own business.
We're going to talk a little bit about more of the different things that you're doing as we move along here, but I always like to start our journey together with a success quote. And this is a saying that's been instrumental in forming your life and your success, something that has a nice meaning to you, and it's a great way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars Yeah. So, Peter, take the wheel.
Well, one of my biggest influences was Bill Scott, the racer and teacher, owner of Summit Point Raceway. Mm-hmm. He was my first driver school instructor, a brilliant guy. I mean, I admired him on many levels. But one thing he pointed out was that the fastest drivers are the ones who are willing to correct the highest number of mistakes. That applies to just about everything. I mean, first you have to recognize that there's a mistake, and then you have to figure out what to do to make it better. Absolutely. Certainly applied to racing, and it applied to photography and everything else.
Well, it sounds like that sharpening of the saw. You have to continue to improve, and definitely something that all of us can learn from in life and in business as well. So what a great mentor to have, a great success quote to combine your passion for cars and your love for photography with somebody you admired so much. That's really great that it's from somebody you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would you share with me a story that instigated your passion for cars, a pivotal moment that you can remember that you really knew you were a car guy?
There was never any doubt. It was just inevitable. That moment must have happened when I was 4. Uh-huh. So I can't identify it, but there really was never any doubt that this was going to be the life's pursuit.
I've got to imagine that those bedtime stories with your father, which sound so wonderful, that instead of fairy tales, he was telling you about real life and how things work and go together.
Right.
That probably was a lot of it, because those things just ingrain in your skull and
yeah, absolutely.
become a piece of your life. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Peter, what I want to do now is take a look at some of the roads you've driven down and really crawl under the hood here and ask if you could share a time when you had a huge challenge or even a great failure in your career, and more importantly, share with us how you overcame that and what you learned from it.
Well, I in the career as a racer, I had a health issue. I had to have a mitral valve repair, and I was determined to come back from that, and I was working 6 weeks after the operation. Mm-hmm. I was racing just a couple months later, and in that year won the SARC, the South Atlantic Road Racing Championship in Formula Continental. So just to underline the recovery, that was...
Well, how did you do that? Because I don't know a lot about that type of a surgery, but what came to mind is Carroll Shelby and how his heart issues stopped his racing career, but certainly he did a huge pivot and stayed in the game. But For you, what kind of things did you have to deal with during those 6 weeks to get back on the track so quick?
Well, I just had to concentrate on, making a little progress every day and sort of ignoring the parts that hurt and just getting on with it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure glad you survived that and came through it, of course, and were able to get back on the track so quickly. That's absolutely amazing. Another guy that comes to mind is Niki Lauda and his horrific accident and being burned so badly, and then the fact that he was back on the track within such an incredible time. That drive to get back to it is something that we all can benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about an aha moment? Let's shift gears here and go to the other end of the spectrum. And I'd love for you to share a story when you had a real aha moment in your business or your career. It's one of those times when you go, wow, you know what? I think I'm really going to make it at this. And tell us the steps that you took to turn that moment into your success.
My racing and the photography career were largely separate and parallel for many years. And then probably 10 years ago, I was talking to an editor. I'd called an editor at Motor Books to collect some information on something unrelated. I wasn't looking to get into doing automotive books, but a long conversation with Peter Bodensteiner, who's now my publishing partner at with the Monographs.
Mm-hmm.
A long conversation, a project he was thinking about, which was the Art of the Hot Rod. They were early in their Art of series of books. So the challenge, of course, was to do studio photographs in locations around the country. And so I started thinking about how to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
The museum photography was a similar exercise. The setting up temporary studios in the museums and photographing objects. So the cars, same challenge, but larger scale. So figured out a way to approach it with this mobile studio that I then built with my friend Don Schneiders, who's a longtime race engineer. So the studio is based on a 28-foot fifth-wheel trailer. Contains a 10 by 20-foot light bank that is suspended in the ceiling, suspended in the ceiling on the trolley system. And then in operation is cantilevered from the top of the trailer out over the set, and the side of the trailer accepts the background, the black background is attached to the side of the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
All the power carts are lashed down in the trailer. We can set up in about an hour from arriving at a site, setting up in a parking lot or side of a road or a field.
Oh, wow.
So, to making studio pictures, very quickly. Ordinarily, it would take half a day or a day just to set up, and that long again to tear down. So this is very quick setup and allowed us to do a lot of work in a lot of places at a lot lower cost than would be normal.
So you actually can shoot outside. You don't have to be indoors.
Yeah, we shoot outside.
Very cool.
Most of the Art of the Hot Rod and the Art of the Muscle Car and Can-Am Cars in Detail, most of that is parking garage or inside a warehouse possibly, or in a parking lot. So, just absolutely anywhere.
Wow.
And it even has its own power too, so we can operate, out of reach of
electrical cords and things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Real quick, can you tell me a little bit more about Stance and Speed and the Monograph Series, and what is that?
After we completed with David Bull the Can-Am Cars in Detail, I was trying to think of another project that would equal that in scope and interest. I had a lot of different ideas, but then it occurred to me that instead of doing a big volume of 20 or 30 cars, I could do individual cars, basically a chapter, an extended chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Peter Bodensteiner about that project. He liked it, and he wanted to be partners in it. So that was the beginning of it.
Very cool. Oh, that's really cool. Well, later in the show here, we'll let people know where they can find out more about that. But another question I have for you has to do with what was your proudest moment in your career? I mean, you've maybe had many, but could you think of one that you could share with me?
I think it's a little broader, not a specific point in time, but to be able to afford to go racing at the levels I have in Formula Atlantic and Camel Lights and such, and to do it on the proceeds of my little business.
Sure.
Yeah. And, a veteran of philosophy school and art school, to be able to do that, I think is a victory.
Oh, I think so. I think for anybody, and artists in particular, when they can come up with a way to actually earn money for what they do, and then, of course, you do whatever you want with that money, is really a special moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a sense of, hey, they liked it, for one thing, but, I might be onto something here. So that aha moment pops up as well. So that's very cool. And I know I used to race vintage cars. It's racing, and at your level, it's very expensive. It takes a lot of money. It eats up a lot of capital, but boy, is it fun.
Yeah, it's addictive for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have a little fun here. Could you share with me your first really special car and let me know about a special memory you had with that vehicle?
Well, my first special car was an Austin Healey 104 that I bought.
My goodness.
A freshman in college. And it needed a rebuild. It had some problems. So did a restoration and loved the car. But when it came time to rebuild the engine, I decided that if Carroll Shelby could do it, so could I. So
there you go.
Took the four-cylinder out and put in a small block Ford 289.
Oh my goodness! You really did do a Shelby move.
Yeah, and it was an amazing car. I mean, just brutal and immediate, and it was my daily driver for years. And I always wondered what a real Cobra was like, but I was certain that it would be better behaved in some way. And when I finally drove a Cobra, it was the same character.
Wow! Oh, how cool!
Immediate and rough, and so it was great fun.
Oh, fantastic! So funny we're talking about Carroll Shelby right now because I just finished this morning writing my blog for Cars Yeah, and the image that I'm going to use is a shot I took of a Shelby Cobra with his signature on the front hood.
Right.
I'm sitting here looking at my screen right now, and I went, yeah, this is so funny we're talking about this right now. But that is really interesting.
And Shelby was definitely a hero of everyone's. He accomplished a lot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How about seller's remorse? Is there a vehicle that you've let go that you really wish you could have back in your garage?
Well, I would like to have back every race car I've ever had. The Rolfs, the Swifts, the Tigas, the Lotuses, the Pratt Miller. Yeah, everyone. You always sell something to move on to something else. But
sure.
I would like to have all those cars. The Pratt Miller, the Sports 2, which was a fairly recent car, that was one of my favorites. A lot of talent went into that, designing that car.
Wow. Well, you've had some really amazing race cars, and not to mention the experiences of driving them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. How about projects? Is there something you're working on right now that really has you excited and fired up that you can share with us?
Well, the next volume of the Monograph Series is due this month. Well, maybe early next month, I understand now. It's the Gurney Eagle, the Spa-winning 1967 Spa-winning Gurney Eagle.
Oh, wow.
That car is in the Miles Collier collection, the Revs Institute in Naples, Florida. Mm-hmm. And I photographed it there. Bob Varsha wrote the text, and it's a terrific terrific history of the car. And Dan Gurney himself wrote the foreword, which is just really chilling. I mean, the real sense of place and time and the importance of that win. And also, a non-photographic project. I'm still working on this Bonneville car. Yeah, it actually hasn't run yet, but I have the car at the studio, and I love just making pieces for it and engineering it and getting it together. So,
is that the car that you sent me a picture of you sitting in?
No, that car is the SoCal Coupe. That's the Alex Exidius SoCal Coupe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the car I'm building is a Lakester, an open wheel streamliner, probably 30 inches tall and 24 inches wide, and has a 159-inch wheelbase. So it's very, very, very long. So it's going to be cool. I'm enjoying that.
Sounds really cool. Now, when will the Gurney book project be completed, where people can get their hands on that?
Well, we're flying in as many as we can before Christmas, and then the rest will be here by ship mid-January.
Okay.
So, limited numbers available before Christmas, but then the rest in January.
And will those be available through the Stanton Speed website?
Yeah, another project we're working on since May is photographing every car at the Revs Institute, the Miles Collier collection in Naples.
Wow.
So we go over 3 or 4 days a week, and we've been doing it for probably 20 weeks, and we have another 20 weeks to go, and it's a fabulous collection. There are best examples of every car over there. It's just really exciting. The only downside to the project is eventually we'll be through.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic project, and we'll make sure that I make a note of that with that collection and that museum on your show notes page as well, so people that haven't found that site can go and check those out. Yeah,
and they have some of the new images up on their website, and a lot up on Instagram.
Very good. Cool.
They're there.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Sounds like wonderful projects. Now, here's a funny question for you, Peter.
Yeah.
If you were a car, what kind of car would Peter be, and why?
Well, given the recent experience, I think I would be a crew cab dually, pulling the trailer through the landscape. The turbo spooled up and John Coltrane on the stereo and some magical destination. I think that's the machine I would have to be.
That's the one. Well, that's why I love that question, because it does bring out a personality side that we can share about who you are and how you perceive yourself. So I like that. At first, I thought you were going to say some kind of race car, but you're the dually pulling it. So very interesting. I love that. All right, Peter, we're up to what I call the last lap, and this is where I fire off a series of questions, and you give our listeners some very quick blips of the throttle answers. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's the best automotive advice you've ever received?
The best advice came from my dad, and it was his view of race car development from the early go-kart days through all the rest of it. He would tell me, you should have left it the way it was last week. and that's advice I always ignored.
Of course.
but he was always concerned that there was some glitch in the new whatever it was, and he thinks the practical thing would be to leave it alone.
Leave it alone, yeah.
Could never do that.
That can be some good advice. Would you share one of your personal habits with us that you believe has contributed to your success?
Well, I think it's an ability to ignore the practical. These things we do are aesthetically driven. Mm-hmm. And if we start to think about workflow or the economics of it, it just drags it down into something else.
Sure.
So, and I'm fortunate to be able to take the time, even if it's at my own expense, to do the things, to give them the time they deserve.
Very nice. How about resources? Is there one in particular that you'd like to share with our listeners? Maybe it's a website or a blog that you get?
Yeah, it's Ross Bentley. It's Speed Secrets. I think it's called SpeedSecretsWeekly.com.
Oh, okay.
Ross is from your area. He's an experienced teacher and writer and accomplished racer. Every week they put up either one of Ross's insights or a guest racer, and always interesting.
Very cool. That's great. Now, how about books? Is there a book that you've read in the past or one that really stands out that you think our listeners should know about?
Well, many, and the most recent, which doesn't relate to any of these fields, a book called Flying the Catalina, and it's about World War II crews flying the PBY Catalina in submarine patrols and rescue operations, and just fascinating the lives they had and all the places they went with those airplanes.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a new one for me. So I'll remind our listeners that we'll post all these resources up at carsyeah.com/Peter Harholdt, and you can find these references there and enjoy them. That's a great one. How about interesting hobbies outside of your passion for cars? I know you love photography, of course, and racing, but anything else?
That is all-consuming. I write some essays that never see the light of day just for my own organization, organizing ideas. Mm-hmm. I hang out with my dogs, my 3 dogs.
We heard them in the background a little bit there.
That's right. They were on the job.
Yes.
And that's about it. It's just, working on books or working on the race cars or
having some
playing
fun
with the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Peter, we're up to what I call the checkered flag. You know what that means, being a racer. We're almost to the end here, and this last question can be a real doozy for some people. If you could only have one collector car in your garage, and this is something that you can't sell to buy a bunch of other cars with, so that little trick's off the table, but money's no object. Christmas is coming, so I'm going to buy you whatever you'd like today.
I can tell you where it is.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Well, what would that vehicle be, and why did you choose it?
Yeah, I think it would be a Cobra Daytona Coupe.
Oh.
And I think it's the most beautiful shape. I just have always been fascinated with that car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, there's several around. None of them are for sale, but...
Thank goodness for me, because I have a feeling they'd be really expensive. Well, those are special cars, and another fellow, Peter Brock, of course, has been a guest here on Cars Yeah, and talked a lot on my interview with him about that car.
That was fascinating.
Yeah, really fun to listen to. So, I'll keep my eyes on the auction block for you, and when one of those comes up, I'll give you a call.
All right,
I'll let you know. Well, Peter, you've taken us on a really great ride today, and I've really enjoyed your stories, and I want to thank you for sharing your life and your journey with me and with the Cars Yeah listeners. Could you give us one parting piece of guidance before you drive off into the sunset in that Daytona coupe?
Yes. Well, I would think we should quarantine the MBAs and teach them some more useful skills and just carry on with our work.
Now that's a unique one. I like that. Well, again, I'll let our listeners know that you can learn all about what we've talked about here at carsyeah.com/Peter. And you can find his show notes page there. And what's the best way for people to find out more about you and more about the projects you're working on and, of course, Stance and Speed?
Stance and Speed keeps things updated. My website is peterharholdt.com, and that's overdue for an update, so we'll work on that.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I'll make sure those are posted so everybody can find all the great work that you've done and what you're up to at carsyeah.com. Peter, thank you so much for being generous with your time today and your expertise. It's been great sharing your life and experiences with me and with the listeners. Until we talk again, I'll see you down the road.
All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.